Bill worked in a pickle factory. He had been employed there for a number of years when he came home one day to confess to his wife that he had a terrible compulsion. He had an urge to stick his penis into the pickle slicer. His wife suggested that he should see a therapist to talk about it, but Bill said he was too embarrassed and would just get over it eventually. A few weeks later, Bill came home and his wife could see at once that something was seriously wrong. "What's wrong, Bill?" she asked. "Do you remember that I told you how I had this crazy urge to put my penis in the pickle slicer?" "Oh, Bill, you didn't." "Yes, I did." "My God, Bill, what happened?" "I got fired." "No, Bill. I mean, what happened with the pickle slicer?" "Oh, she got fired too." The dean at an exclusive girls' school was lecturing her students on sexual morality. "We live today in very difficult times for young people. In moments of temptation," she said, "ask yourself just one question. Is an hour of pleasure worth a lifetime of shame?" A young woman rose in the back of the room and said, "Excuse me, but how do you make it last a whole hour?" Three women are talking about their sex lives. One says, "I call my husband the dentist because nobody can drill like he does." The next says, "I call my husband the miner because he has an incredible shaft." The third sighs and says, "I call mine the postman." "Why the postman?" one of them asks. "Because he always delivers late, and half the time, it's in the wrong box." While talking to girl, "Hey, I heard an interesting stat the other day. They said that 80% of women masturbate in the shower. Know what the other 20% do?" She said, "No, what?" He said, "Yeah, I figured you were in the first group." Three country boys come to a brothel. The hostess asks the first one, "What's your size?" "Exactly 30 centimeters, bravely answers the guy. The hostess asks the staff, "Girls, who wants one?" All the girls, 15 of them, shout in excitement, Me, I want." So the guy picks out his choice, and they go into a room. The hostess asks the second about his size. He says he has 20 centimeters. The girls sighed disappointedly, but work is work. 5 of them agreed to this size. The hostess asks the third, "What size is he?" "I have 12 centimeters, answers the third. Well, the girls whine that no pleasure. He himself will not like it. They say, "All used many times already today." The hostess says, "The prestige of the company requires that any client was served. I work, rarely, not so tortured, will have to lie down." They went into the room after a while from there. Moans, screams, shouts, squeals. After 10 minutes, the mistress barely crawls out, bent, barely moving her legs, and with difficulty says, "You village fool, you should measure your penis in length." A man is in a hotel lobby. He wants to ask the clerk a question. As he turns to go to the front desk, he accidentally bumps into a woman beside him, and as he does, his elbow goes into her breast. They are both startled, and he says, "Ma'am, if your heart is as soft as your breast, I know you'll forgive me." She replies, "If your junk is as hard as your elbow, I'm in room 1221. God visited with Bill Clinton, Fidel Castro, and Bill Gates, and told them he was going to bring about the end of the world. Bill Clinton immediately goes on CNN and tell the country, "I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is there is a God. The bad news is he's going to end the world." Fidel Castro addresses the communists and says, "I've got bad news and worse news. The bad news is we were wrong. There is a God. The worst news is he's going to end the world." Bill Gates sends out an email that says, "I've got good news and better news. The good news is there is a God. The better news is we won't have to worry about finishing the upgrade for Windows 95. A blonde is lamenting her problems selling her old car, which has 120,000 miles on it. Her friend says, "I know something you can do, but it's not exactly legal." "That's okay," says the blonde. "What is it?" The friend says, "I have a friend who runs a garage and he could run the mileage back on your car and make it easier to sell." "Sounds great," says the blonde. "Tell me where to find him." The blonde goes to see the mechanic, and he runs back the mileage on her car to 50,000. A few weeks later, the blonde sees her friend who asks, "Did you ever sell your car?" "Why should I?" replies the blonde. "It only has 50,000 miles on it." Ted and his wife were working in their garden one day when Ted looks over at his wife and says, "Your butt is getting really big. I mean, really big." I bet your butt is bigger than the barbecue." With that, he proceeded to get a measuring tape and measure the grill. Then, he went over to where his wife was working and measured his wife's bottom. "Yes, I was right. Your butt is 2 inches wider than the barbecue." The wife chose to ignore her husband. Later that night in bed, Ted is feeling a little frisky. He makes some advances towards his wife, who completely brushes him off. "What's wrong?" he asks. She answers,
"Do you really think I'm going to fire up this big-ass grill for one little weenie?"
A 70-year-old man went to his doctor's office to get a sperm count. The doctor gave the man a jar and said, "Take this jar home and bring me back a sample tomorrow." The next day, the 70-year-old man reappears at the doctor's office and gives him the jar, which is as clean and empty as on the previous day. The doctor asked what happened, and the man explains, "Well, doc, it's like this. First I tried with my right hand, but nothing. Then I tried with my left hand, but still nothing. Then I asked my wife for help. She tried with her right hand, with nothing. Then her left, but nothing. She even tried with her mouth, first with the teeth in, then with the teeth out, and still nothing. We even called up the lady next door, and she tried with both hands and her mouth too, but nothing." The doctor was shocked. "You asked your neighbor?" The old man replied, "Yep, but no matter what we tried, we couldn't get the darn jar open." Little Johnny comes down to breakfast. Since they live on a farm, his mother asks if he had done his chores. "Not yet," said little Johnny. His mother tells him no breakfast until he does his chores. Well, he's a little pissed off, so he goes to feed the chickens, and he kicks a chicken. He goes to feed the cows, and he kicks a cow. He goes to feed the pigs, and he kicks a pig. He goes back in for breakfast, and his mother gives him a bowl of dry cereal. "How come I don't get any eggs and bacon? Why don't I have any milk in my cereal?" he asks. "Well," his mother says, "I saw you kick a chicken, so you don't get any eggs for a week. I saw you kick the pig, so you don't get any bacon for a week either. I also saw you kick the cow, so for a week you aren't getting any milk." Just then, his father comes down for breakfast and kicks the cat halfway across the kitchen. Little Johnny looks up at his mother with a smile and says, "Are you going to tell him? Or should I?" Two men are sitting drinking at a bar at the top of the Empire State Building when the first man turns to the other and says, "You know, last week, I discovered that if you jump from the top of this building, by the time you fall to the 10th floor, the winds around the building are so intense that they carry you around the building and back into the window." The bartender just shakes his head in disapproval while wiping the bar. The second guy says, "What are you, a nut? There is no way that could happen." "No, it's true," said the first man. "Let me prove it to you." He gets up from the bar, jumps over the balcony, and plummets to the street below. When he passes the 10th floor, the high wind whips him around the building and back into the 10th floor window, and he takes the elevator back up to the bar. He met the second man, who looked quite astonished. "You know, I saw that with my own eyes, but that must have been a one-time fluke." "No, I'll prove it again," says the first man as he jumps. Again, just as he is hurling toward the street, the 10th floor wind gently carries him around the building and into the window. Once upstairs, he urges his fellow drinker to try it. "Well, what the hey?" the second guy says. "It works. I'll try it." He jumps over the balcony, plunges downward, passes the 11th, 10th, 9th, 8th floors, and hits the sidewalk with a splat. Back upstairs, the bartender turns to the other drinker saying, "You know, Superman, sometimes you can be a real jerk."